Hi there, I'm Sister Maria Goretti, and I'm originally from the Archdiocese of Toronto. Now I live in the Diocese of Hamilton as a sister of Our Lady Immaculate. And I just wanted to share with you about how Jesus called me to be his bride as a sister of Our Lady Immaculate. Growing up, I grew up in a Catholic home. We went to Sunday Mass every week. But for me, I didn't really think that being Catholic was anything more than going to Mass on Sunday or saying a few prayers with my family every so often. And I really didn't know that religious life was something that people still did. I didn't really know anything about being a religious. So before I started grade 11, I met the sisters at Martyr Shrine in Midland, Ontario, on a day pilgrimage, and I signed up on their mailing list just on a whim, as my youth leader at the time was kind of like, you should sign up on their list, so I did. But I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think I was ever going to hear from them or anything like that. But a few months later, I actually got an email from one of the sisters asking to help out at a young girls retreat that they were having at the time. And again, on a whim, I just said yes. I didn't know anything about the community at the time, and I certainly didn't know about religious life. But again, something told me, this is a nice thing to do. And I said yes. And so as I was at that retreat, I interacted with the sisters, and I noticed that they had such joy and such peace. And so as a grade 11 student, I knew that I wanted that in my life. I knew that I wanted that joy and that peace in my life. And so when I came back from that retreat, I told my mom it was a great time, and she even said to me, she's like, I noticed that there's something a little different about you. And in hindsight, I guess that's where the seeds of my vocation were really planted. I didn't think anything of it until a few months later when I attended Steubenville, Toronto. And during adoration, the priest asked us to ask our Lord for a one-word answer to a question that we may have. And so I very boldly asked our Lord, do you want me to be a sister? And in the depths of my heart, all I heard was the word yes. And I knew that was such a scary answer. And I started to cry immediately, and I said, no way, Lord, you're asking way too much from me. I'm only in grade 11, I'm going to grade 12, I have my whole life ahead of me. I can't give everything up. You're asking too much. And so I spent the next year running for my call. I went through grade 12 and all the joys of grade 12, and I didn't think anything of, religious life. But as it came towards the end of my grade 12 year, I noticed that there was still this tug at my heart and this gnawing at the back of my brain of you're actually called to something greater. And so I decided then to actually actively discern my vocation, which meant that I got a spiritual director that I met with regularly. I started to learn more about religious life. What does it really mean to be a religious? And what does it mean to take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience? And I also started to visit a community. And so at the time, I only knew of the Sisters of Our Lady Immaculate, and so I decided to start there. And when I visited on a come and see retreat, I got to interact with the sisters, be a part of their community life, be a part of prayer with the sisters, and it felt like home. There was a great peace and holiness that showed me for the first time that God could actually call me to be a religious, little old me, to be a religious sister. And so I spent 3 years discerning religious life, which meant that I grew in my prayer life, I grew in knowledge of the community, I visited a number of times, and I also just grew in my knowledge of religious life in general. I entered in 2018 after doing a summer of Totus Tuus as a missionary, which really taught me my love of teaching the faith, which is part of our charism as the Sisters of Our Lady Immaculate, is that we teach the faith correctly and courageously. And it showed me this great love to teach kids about the truths of our faith, of being a Catholic. And so as I entered in 2018, I entered as a candidate, and just this past August of 2022, I made my first vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. And so I'm grateful to God for him to have called me to be a religious with the Sisters of Our Lady Immaculate. And I pray that I'm able to radiate that joy every day that I saw back in grade 11 and that I see every day in my sisters. So thank you and God bless.